welcome to another Bearfoot Miniatures rundown of, this time, the Emperor's Children Legion. And we're actually getting to near the end of the Legion types. So I think we've only got Thousand Suns left. So we're going to be going over their Legion rule, advanced reaction, Warlord Traits, special war gear, all that sort of stuff. Rites of War, special units, special characters, Legacies characters, because I've remembered it this time. And Fulgrim, finally, because you don't do the money shot first. So, with that, overall, I normally would say something like, oh, I love the Legion. However, I loathe this Legion. They take Perturabo's soul and they're proper Legion traitors. They not only betray the Emperor, which I'm fully for, but also then their Legion brothers on Terror and abandon them. I loathe this Legion. That might be what excites you about this Legion, I suppose, the Legion of Excess. What have they got as a Legion rule? They've got Flawless Execution. On a turn in which they make a successful charge, even if it was disordered. Straight away, really good even if it was disordered. Models with the Legion Astartes, Emperor's Children, make their attacks in assault at one initiative step higher than normal, after modifiers have been applied. Models with this special rule and vehicle type gain +1 to all to hit rolls with defensive weapons when making a shooting attack as part of a reaction. Now, I'll do the boring bit of this Legion Astartes rule first, the vehicle bit. I actually really, really like this vehicle bit of the rule. It makes you ballistic skill 5 for all of your defensive weapons shooting back, so that means your pin tools are a ballistic skill 5, like so your multi-melters, so that's a strength 8 return fire because it's defensive. You've got all your Volkites that might be surrounding your tanks because they're the only tanks that can react now, with Volkite ones and stuff like that. I think it's a really solid rule to just have tacked on casually to the end of what I think is one of the better Legion rules. I think it's really, really good. As just a tacking on rule. Now, the rule proper, Flawless Execution for your +1 initiative step. Now, this applies across the board. We must be 8 months into the how many months are we into the Heresy now? So we're in amounts of months into the Heresy now. So we all sort of know the general gist of this. Attacking faster than everyone else if you charge. These pretty common knowledge now that your Power Fists attack at Initiative 2. So before everyone else's Power Fist. Thunderhammer's the same. And I think really that's what makes this an absolutely excellent rule. Your Thunderhammers going a step before enemies' Terminator squads actually is absolutely massive because it stops you getting doubled out in return. So your Terminators can really trade off in a positive manner against even, I'd say, Fist Terminators with their 3-up invuns. Now, one of the unintended consequences of this, I think, for what the design team must have surely been going for, though I imagine they were going for the Fists, but I don't think they would have imagined how prolific Thunderhammers and everything would be. Now, it actually, I think, devalues your Initiative 4 base weapons, or your swords, your Pheonix Power Spears, things like that. Because, well, you're already striking before everyone else's Initiative 1s, so the things that you're really scared of at Initiative 1 when you've got a 2-up save are that you're going before them anyway. So I think it actually leans you more heavily into taking those Initiative 1 weapons and weirdly striking lower in the initiative order than a lot of your enemies. Now, that might come back to bite you in the arse against Suzerain, but what don't Suzerain bite in the arse? Other side effects of this rule is that your Despoiler squads on the charge will be going before anyone else's basic Marines. So that's maybe something to lean into, quite like that you can be mixing your axes, maybe your Power Mauls or Lances. Lances, I suppose you don't really need the additional Reach 1, but certainly your Power Mauls at AP3 are going to be really effective striking and killing on 2s, and before your opponent gets to strike back. So I think that's a really good way to use this. Obviously, there's no benefit to your shooting. Now, and I think it actually makes them one of the better traitor legions, at least. I wouldn't say that they're the absolute top of the heresy, but I do think they're one of the better traitor legions. I just think how this rule has steered you is more into, like, your generic units will benefit more than how they've lent into the legion specific units. Now, your advanced reaction, the perfect counter, is actually a really good tie-in with your legion rule. So, once per battle, why do I keep saying the once per battle bit? Every video, why do I keep saying it? When an enemy unit declares a charge, you can, in return, declare a charge, basically. Also make a charge roll for the reacting unit. If the result is equal to or greater than the enemy unit, the reacting unit immediately charges, cancelling the enemy's charge. Or, if the reacting player's charge roll is lower than the enemy unit, the player may choose to make a shooting attack with the reacting unit, basically. Which is really good. It means that you're going to be striking that +1 initiative on that crucial turn when somebody's got the charge off on you instead of you getting it on them. Means a little bit that you can charge with impunity into the enemy line and not worry about the counter charge from the really scary unit, because the closer they get to you and therefore more likely their charge is, the more likely your charge is. So I wouldn't at all say it was that much of a downside that you're in the middle of the enemy and might get countercharged, because you've got this. Yeah, it's really good out of sequence charging yet again, rearing its head and being... Well, I'm not actually too upset about it this time because it's on a traitor legion side. Sorry, loyalists. So yeah, he's off to a really strong start with the Emperor's Children, and let's see if it carries on, eh? So the Warlord traits, you have the Broken Mirror, which is traitor only. A Warlord, if a friendly unit falls back within 12 inches of Warlord with this Warlord trait, or it fails morale checks, I should say, instead of falling back, it suffers one wound that cannot be negated by armor, damage mitigation, things like that. Once it's been resolved, it's considered to have passed the morale check, and play continues as normal. In addition, you get an additional reaction within the shooting phase. Now, I think this is incredible. It basically makes you pseudo-fearless without any of the downsides of fearless. Yeah, you take a wound, but many of our real top-tier units are now 2 wounds a model, so you maybe don't even lose a model if you've not already got a wound counter on. It's just really, really good. It keeps your force around. It's not really one that I would expect from an Emperor's Children Legion, but it gives you that staying power. I will say it's much better than the Iron Warrior's Fearless one, because the Iron Warrior's Fearless one only applies to the general in his unit and you lose control of that unit. Yeah, I think it's one of the better Warlord traits in the game because of just how much failing of leadership tests occurs now. So it keeps you around and is really, really good. Martyrs of Istvan, that's loyalist only. So a Warlord with this trait and all models in a unit the Warlord is joined that have Emperor's Children gain +1 to hit rolls when locked in combat with an enemy unit with any version of Legion Astartes and Traitor Allegiance. In addition, an army whose Warlord with this trait may make an additional reaction during the assault phase, so long as the Warlord has not been removed as a casualty. Again, really, really strong. It's +1 to hit is never going to be a downside. If you're in a weapon skill 4 unit, it makes you hit on 4s against weapon skill 5, which is one of the bigger changes I find this edition, is that your basic weapon skill 4 units tend to just be terrible at taking out anything that isn't also weapon skill 4. It also means you will hit on 2s with your weapon skill 5 units charging a weapon skill 4. Or weapon skill 5, 3s. I know everyone can do maths, but the actual swings in those rules are massive. It means, I don't know, just as an example, that your Tartarus Terminator squads, your ordinary Tartarus Terminator squads, will still hit on 4s versus an enemy specialist, Terminator squad, which might be a thing that I would recommend to all Emperor's Children players. So Paragon of Excellence, this is the neutral Warlord trait. When any friendly unit within 12 of a Warlord with this trait, including the Warlord and any units it has joined, passes a morale check, it gains +1 weapon skill until the end of the controlling player's next turn. It can only be applied once per game turn. In addition, an army whose Warlord has this trait, movement phase. So, again, incredibly good. It's a bit of a toss-up between, if you're playing Loyalists or have the option of either of these, or the Loyalist trait, I tend to err on the side of the 12-inch bubble for this neutral one. Just because it can affect more units than the singular unit can. I'm much more a sort of army buff person than I am a singular larger buff. So this one suits me a bit more. But I think all three are really solid. I do lean heavily to the Broken Mirror for traitors, just because of how much of a difference that leadership is playing in the game nowadays. I don't think there's a bad choice between any of them. So it's still a strong, play from the Emperor's Children. So on to the Rites of War. You get the Marascara, up to 4 units selected as elites, troops, fast attack in this detachment, and that do not include any models with heavy, slow, or bombard unit subtype may be granted outflank at the start of the battle before any models are destroyed. Deployed. All of the controlling players' units made entirely of Emperor's Children and deployed on the battlefield may add +1 to their movement until the start of the turn in which the controlling player brings in units into play from the reserve. Basically, your hidden blade, when that comes in, your open blade starts moving a bit slower back at normal speed. But until that point, you're going to be +1 movement. That's going to put you into the movement 8 range for the +1 to the charge. It can make you really, if you're going to get a second turn charge, you can basically organise it so that your wave all hits on turn 2. The controlling player does not make a reserves roll for any flanking assault or subterranean assault. Instead, deploy onto the battlefield at the start of any turns after the first without making a reserves roll. May not include movement characteristic 0 units. No more than half may be assigned to flanking assault, subterranean, or held in reserve. Must take a Legion Centurion, Cataphractic Centurion, Tartarus, with a Legion Champion or Pheonix Warden console upgrade as a HQ slot. Now, none of these I don't see these as really as a downside. They're not that big. Now, one of the things that I would think about, there's not that much of an upside anymore for outflank. Now, with everything going faster, you're going to be in combat turn 2 anyway. Maybe you could get a Xiphon coming in from outflank, but he's just going to get shot down because planes are so squishy. Yeah, I don't think outflank is as good as it was before. Yes, you can charge from outflank, which is very useful, but you've always got that danger of someone wrapping the marker with just a fairly large squad, and then you just can't come in on any turn until you've removed that unit. I think that's a real downside to outflank. Henry, you can see playing Emperor's Children, using it on the channel against World Eaters. I like it. I like the concept of it. I like that the reserves rolls are very reliable. I don't know how much I would be recommending to make use of the outflank marker unless you're very conservative with it. In which case, why did you just not deploy on the battlefield? So it's up to you, obviously, how you use it, but be careful with the outflank marker. Like, I've seen it punished quite a few times now when you get a bit aggressive with its placement, because your enemy knows where the outflank is coming from, and then you add in the augury scanners being across an army, which I don't think is too bad of a thing, but you need enough units in the outflank. I know there's 4. You need enough units in the outflank to soak up some damage from the augury scanners getting free reaction fires at you, and to still be able to make it worth it by having enough units. So Third Company Elite, now this I think is the premier Emperor's Children Rite of War at this time. So you've got Karkophani squads maybe taken as troops, surgical augments for plus 30 points a unit. All models in the unit must be given the same surgical augment. So that's a bit of a change as to how you equip them on units. May only be used by traitors. All models with a character subtype must take a surgical augment. And that's it, really. There's no massive downsides. If you basically want surgical augments on every unit, you might as well do this anyway, because there's no other stipulations, really. I think this is a really good Rite of War because Karkophani squads are absolutely amazing now. Fearless, deflagrate, strength 6, like 3 shots I think it is, off the top of my head. There's nothing to not like about that. It means that your surgical augments are on every model in the unit, which means that they can't be sniped out of the units like is on normal surgical augments that we'll get to in like literally a second, which is a massive bonus because usually how you equip them, so just moving on into the armory section, any model with the Traitor Allegiance subtype, Emperor's Children special rule, and the character unit subtype may be given a single surgical augment for the cost of 20 points. So that means if your sergeant is sniped out, you will no longer have the surgical augment. For 30 points there, you're protecting your entire squad's surgical augment upgrade by having it on every model, which I think is a really, really good benefit if you against Seekers, if you're against anyone with Nemesis Bolters, if you're against Raven Guard as much as I am. All of those, it really, really helps against. So it's definitely worth that 30 points over the 20 for the entire unit. Now, I think we'll just get straight into the armory. And again, the Third Company Elite, really, really good Rite of War. I think it's the better one, the one that you should be taking if you want like the best, rather than any other form of Emperor's Children army. Really, I suppose you could just do any late war Emperor's Children army with Third Company Elite. You don't have to take Karkophani in there. There's no stipulation, there's no minimum amount you have to take. There's no real downside to that Rite of War. You could just take it as, I want to take surgical augments on all of my squads as a late war Emperor's Children army. So even if you don't want the loads of Karkophani, you can do it that way. So actually into the armory now, we get surgical augments, 20 points on a character type or character subtype, Legion of Astartes, Emperor's Children, and Traitor. You get Sonic Shriekers. Now basically this is -1 to hit when you charge or are charged. Units that are immune to fear are immune to this. Now this means when combined with your Legion rule, if you're charging, you're going before enemy fists. If you have the bubble of +1 weapon skill and you've passed a leadership check, you can be weapon skill 5 with a normal Terminator squad. And this then gets round the downside of a weapon skill 4 squad to make it effectively weapon skill 5 against when you've got weapon skill 4, or weapon skill 6 when you've got weapon skill 5, which is a real big swing for just 20 points. I imagine if you were going to factor that into the model's cost, you definitely pay more than 20 points for that, or even 30 in the Third Company Elite. So I definitely recommend taking this on pretty much all units which you're going to get into combat with. There's no real downside to it. Oh, well, there is no downside to it, except the fact that it's 20 points, but I suppose that's points games, right? So yeah, I'd recommend it on every combat unit. It's just a no-brainer choice when you sort of get into combat units. You've got the Subsonic Pulsar. You ignore the penalty to leadership and ballistic skill imposed by night fighting special rules. Importantly, you don't ignore the range penalty, and you don't gain the night vision special rule, which then it makes you ignore damage, evade damage mitigation type. So there's that bit of difference from the true night vision rule. It's the same points as Prey Sight is for Night Lords, but they obviously only get the night vision. Is it worth it? I think it is, really, on your dedicated shooting units. I wouldn't do it all the time. I'd probably just take a Tech Marine for that +1 ballistic skill. However, with, say, your Sunkiller squads, I think it's probably worth it. We'll get into it at that point, but I think it's worth it there when you don't need the ballistic skill 5, you don't need the damage mitigation ignoring. I think it's a good upgrade. I won't be upset by being forced to take it from Third Company Elite. Oh, I'm so mixed about this. I don't think it's the greatest, I don't think it's the worst. If you can't afford a Tech Marine, take this, essentially. There's a good summary of that one. So, Sonic Lance. You get the Sonic Lance as a weapon, range template, strength 2, assault 1, breaching, pinning. So, having this for 30 points on the Third Company Elite is, I would say, a really good option. You get that assault 1 pinning, breaching 6. You're going to be breaching most of the time, except against toughness 3 mooks. Now, when you apply that to an entire squad, though, that becomes really, really effective. Especially when it's a large despoiler squad. Even a large tactical squad, really, a despoiler squad, very, very good. Now, I've already said put Sonic Shriekers on a despoiler squad, or a large squad like that. How I would do that is you only need Sonic Shriekers on one model. So say your Apothecary, which has joined the large squad or whatever squad, you give them Sonic Shriekers and you give the squad Sonic Lances, just so you can react and do a pinning attack that might stop your opponent from charging. And it doesn't cost you a ton more points to give all of that unit Sonic Shriekers. Yeah, it don't cost you a ton more points to give that unit Sonic Shriekers. It gets back into the realms of potentially being sniped out, but it is a way to get dual upgrades into the same squad for not an exorbitant amount of points. So it's worth considering. I suppose it's, do you trust yourself to roll 6s? That's the choice here. But I would prioritise Sonic Shriekers over that. But when you can, that's a way to get it into both squads, is on the Apothecary, on the Tech Marine, obviously on a character that you might join the squad with. So then Pheonix pattern power weapons. Any model with Legion of Astartes, Emperor's Children and character subtype may swap a power weapon for one of the following at no additional points cost. You can swap for a Pheonix Rapier, which is basically a power sword with Murderous Strike 6+, or a Pheonix Power Spear, which is +2 strength, AP 3, reach 1, Murderous Strike 6+, breaching 6+, two-handed. This is a bit of a weird one, I would say. The Pheonix Rapier is obviously worth it whenever you're going to take a power sword, because it's a no points cost upgrade to the power sword. So, brilliant. Take that. You go in first when you charge, at initiative 5 over everyone else's initiative 4. I think it's good. I can't argue with a no points upgrade. You just gain Murderous Strike for free. Like, there's no downside to that because it's no points cost and there's no drawbacks to it. Now, the Pheonix Power Spear, this is a bit more of a thinker, because this is denying you an extra attack for 2 close combat weapons. You reach 1, yes, you're going at initiative 5 with an initiative 4 model, but you're already doing that on the charge anyway. And most of the time when you charge, your enemy isn't getting an initiative +1 from anywhere, because it's a lot of the time on the charge. Maybe you get it with lances, but where do you see these weapons? You see the Pheonix Power Spears on Pheonix Terminators, and on your, what they call Pheonix Palatine Blades. You see it on the Palatine Blades. I think it's potentially worth it on your squad sergeants if you were going to take a power sword anyway, but I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend an axe for the AP2 all the time, even if you just mutually wipe each other out. I even personally use power fists rather than axes, and guess what? Your power fist goes at initiative 2. So it's very hard to recommend that spear following that train of logic. Now, on your Terminators, well, do you want a Terminator killing unit for your Terminators, or do you want a Tactical Marine killing unit? There's the bit of the grey area in there, which is like veterans at 2 wounds. My Terminators, I want them to take out the biggest, hardest enemy unit in combat. Even if they wipe each other out, so long as I trade with them, it tends to be that's the way that I want to go. Because the rest of my army is equipped to be able to deal with those tactical marines that the Terminators haven't hoovered up. Whereas a really scary combat unit is usually quite hard to deal with in any fashion. So if I can just take it out with a bunch of Thunderhammers and lose my own unit in return, great, it's done with, I don't have to worry about it. Now, the Pheonix Power Spear won't do that, because although you've got Murderous Strike 6+, and you're wounded on 2s, the Breaching 6, to ignore the armour, just isn't reliable enough to be able to get through big units. So then you're left with the grey area of 2 wound veterans and tactical marines that you can reliably attack. Now, you are going to go through the veterans with 3 up armor save. Realistically, you will get through that unit and sweep them, things like that, just by the sheer volume of attacks that you put out with the amount of AP2s. You'll probably go through a significant amount of the unit. Those are 2 of the simpler things to take out. It's this 2 wound, 2 up save units that you really want to do in. So it again, like many of the Legion weapons, I think pales a bit when compared to the generic weapons. That's not such a terrible place to be in for the game as in general, because most Legions are like that. It's more of a choice that is slightly worse, I find, than the generic weapons. But it's just a bit of a shame that Pheonix Power Spears for 2 editions now haven't been brilliant. On to Pheonix Wardens. That's a 30-point upgrade for a Legion Consul. You gain the Skill Unmatched and Living Icon special rules. The Skill Unmatched, in the Initiative 10 step, you may select one of the 3 following special rules and apply the effects of that option to all models with this special rule for the duration of that assault phase. A Perfect Guard, increase weapon skill by +1 for the purposes of to hits against you, but must reduce attacks by -1. A Perfect Strike, increase weapon skill +1 when trying to hit the enemy, reduce attacks by -1. A Perfect Fury, +1 attack, -1 weapon skill. This makes you quite tailorable to what you're doing. It means your Legion champion is a lot of the time against squads going to get +1 attack. A Perfect Guard, you've got 2 ways of using this really. Is a Perfect Guard with Sonic Shriekers means that your enemy is likely going to be hitting you on 6s when they're striking your Pheonix Warden or anyone with weapon skill 5. Because if their squad has weapon skill 5, you get -1 from the Shriekers, and then Skill Unmatched when striking at your Palatine Blades, your Pheonix Terminators, or Pheonix Warden, they're going to then hit you on 6s. And that makes the squad incredibly survivable. But when you're striking with your Power Spears, it means that you're going to get less chance to get those 6s for Murderous Strikes and Breachings. And when they get a 6, a lot of the time that results in a squish. A Perfect Strike, +1 weapon skill for hitting people. Now, this, I think, is one of the better ones. It means that you're going to hit a lot of things on a 3. If you are Loyalist, you can end up then hitting things on a 2 very, very easily in that Warlord squad. I think it's a good rule. A Perfect Fury, +1 attack is never something to sniff at. Now, Living Icons, a model with a special rule, enemy-friendly model with Legion Astartes, Emperor's Children, and at least 1 model within 6, gains +1 to the score when determining a winner in the assault phase. However, does not stack with the effect of Fulgrim's Sire of the Emperor's Children special rule. Gains a Pheonix pattern power weapon of any kind and an Iron Halo for no additional cost. That's quite good for 30 points. The Iron Halo, if we take in, they all seem to come standard now, but they're 25 points for an Iron Halo, plus the Skill Unmatched, which you're picking what style you want to go with. It's not a particularly bad unit type. I think it's quite fluffy. It's not massively OP as a unit type, as a console, that is. I would have liked to seen it being able to be taken. One of the things it does do is allow you to fill the Marascara Rite of War conditions with taking an Emperor's Children specific unit, which is very nice. It's not the best thing in the world. But it's not the best thing in the world. So, on to Pheonix Terminators. Now, this is a squad that really struggled in first edition. So, let's see where they are now. So, 200 points for 5 Terminators. Their movement 7 in Tartarus armor. Weapon skill 5. Strength toughness 4. 2 wounds. 2 attacks, 3 on the sergeant. Leadership 8, 9 on the sergeant. You've got Stubborn, which is really good. You've got Skill Unmatched and Living Icons, which are the Pheonix Warders special rule. You've got the Pheonix Retinue special rule. Basically, you can take it as a retinue squad and gain a Legion standard and Pheonix Rapier instead of a Pheonix Power Spear for plus 15 points, which will then give you line. Really quite good. I actually don't mind the downgrade to Pheonix Rapier from the Power Spear because you're still getting the same number of attacks, you're still looking for that Murderous Strike 6, and you're still getting the Rend on or the Breaching on a 6. So I don't even think that's a downgrade. I would definitely do that as a retinue. Now, they've all got the Pheonix Power Spears, so as we went through in the Pheonix Power Spear section, I do think Thunderhammers or Power Fists are better options for your Terminators. It's only 35 points extra model, not too bad. Say not too bad. I don't think they're as good as regular Terminators with them. So bear with me while I just say not too bad. It's 25 points for the entire unit to take a surgical augment. Again, I'd definitely take the Sonic Shriekers upgrade. The other two aren't that brilliant for them. Obviously, you don't need the leadership or ballistic skill because you've not got a ranged weapon. You've got Stubborn. The Sonic Lance could be quite nice. Better, I would say, to just use the Surgical Augment for -1 to hit. That, when stacked, as I said, with Skill Unmatched, means that people could be hitting you on 6s, especially with your Weapon Skill 5. Anyone Weapon Skill 5 will be hitting you on 6s in the first round of combat. It gives them a bit of staying power. Again, I just don't think they're in the right place, which is a shame. They're strength of 6 with those Pheonix Spears. So if you combine a charge with Destroyers and these at the same time, you can be doubling people out and other Terminator squads out, which can then start stacking up a little bit, but that you're relying on your opponent to roll ones of the armor saves. And I just don't see it coming off often enough when I've tried to pray for my opponent to come up ones quite a lot. It just doesn't happen that often. So I don't think they're the best of options. I really like them as a unit, as a concept, as an idea, but I just don't think they're in the greatest of places right now. On to Palatine Blades. You get 165 for 5. You got movement 7, weapon skill 5, ballistic skill 5. Ballistic skill 5! Strength toughness 4, 2 wounds, initiative 4, 2 attacks, leadership 8, 2 up save. So you get bolt pistol, charnable weapon. Charnable weapon, brilliant. Frag grenades, crack grenades, artificer armor. You've got relentless, chosen warriors, counterattack 1, skill unmatched. This, I would say, is a much more usable unit. So you can take an additional 5 Palatine Blades for 28 points each. You can get power weapons or Pheonix Spears or Rapiers for 5 points each. Now, would I upgrade the charnable weapons on these guys? Do you know what? I don't know whether I would. You can get Breaching 5 with a charnable saver, and as we know, you're breaching 6 or rending 6 on a Pheonix Rapier. So it sort of depends what you're going with or what you're going up against. If you go with the Pheonix Power Spears or Rapiers, you're going to get rending rather than breaching, which can be useful if you're going against Dreadnoughts. Would you want to go against Dreadnoughts with this squad? Potentially. Like, you've got the initiative 5 step, the breach, the rending with 4 attacks each. Could it be done? Yes. Do I think you want to do it? No, not particularly. I think it could be done. I don't think it's the best use of this squad. I'm actually more in favour of keeping with the charnable weapons, You're rending on 5s with the... What type of charnable weapon is it? The good charnable weapon. You're rending on 5s with the charnable just basic saber. Or breaching on 5s, sorry. Not rending. You're breaching on 5s with the just basic charnable saber. That is where I would go with this squad. Because it just doubles the amount of AP2 attacks that is coming out of this squad. You could go with axes on this squad, but I mean, they're beautiful models. Use them with the charnable sabers. Do not use them with the axes. Please, please. And definitely don't send me a picture of a Palatine Blade with an axe if you have made them, because that's just horrendous. Though I suppose any time I've said any form of insult against the Emperor's Children here, you should be reveling in it if you are an Emperor's Children player, because that is the whole purpose of the Legion now, right? 25 points for a Surgical Augment. Definitely take the Surgical Augment for -1 to hit, because it's a combat unit. Yeah, the one downside of this, or one of the downsides of this squad, other than the not reliable AP2 at any form of initiative, is the fact that you cannot take a Raider or heavy transport, basically. And that's not because I think the Raider is going to survive forever. It's because it's an assault transport. So if you put them in a Rhino, Termite, or Drop Pod, you can't assault the turn you get out of that vehicle. Now, so that's going to take a secondary slot. They've also lost the ability to take a jump pack, so I think that just hinders them a bit more this edition, and they definitely need those jump packs back, in my opinion. So onto the Karkophani, and this is the real creme de la creme of the units in the main book. So we get 150 points for 5 Karkophani. They're only 1 wound, which is a bit of a shame, but they're leadership 10, fearless, so yes, you can't evade, but who cares? You're going to be returning fire. Everyone has a Karkophani weapon, which is range 36, strength 6, AP 5, assault 3, gets hot, pinning, shell shock 1, deflagrate, which is just a horrible combination. The pinning and shell shock 1 at strength 6, so you're wounding Marines on 2s, and then taking their leadership check at -1. I think it stacks up to a really scary unit. They've got a long range of 36, especially for an assault weapon. Bolt pistols, sonic shriekers, just standard, so -1 to hit. They're not the greatest things in combat, but they can certainly get stuck in at a last-ditch effort. Yeah, I do think these are one of the stellar key units of the Emperor's Children this edition, and you should definitely try them out. Third Company Elite, this is why that Rite of War is so good. You can see it on the channel, actually. Henry's Third Company Elite versus my Solar Auxilia. So that's a couple of months ago that you can see that before Christmas. And yeah, they are really good, cheap for 25 points each, and definitely be taking them. Even Rhino Transport, because they can hop out of it. Keep them a bit safe with 3 armoured wounds. So just an absolutely brilliant unit, and a brilliant unit to have as troops in the Third Company Elite. So now on to their legacy units, which is the Sunkiller Squad for 185 points. They've got Weapon Skill 4, Ballistic Skill 5, Strength Toughness 4, 1 wound, Initiative 4, 1 attack, Leadership 7 with 8 on the Sergeant, 3 up save. They've got a las cannon as standard. They've got Precision Fire, Designated Quarry, and Fortified Position. So it's plus 40 points for a Sunkiller as additional. You can get Augury Scanner for 20 points. You can get Melter Bombs or Artificer Armour on the Sergeant for 5 and 10 points respectively. Definitely go with the Artificer Armour. The Melter Bombs I'd just completely leave alone. Why would you? But you already knew that. You can change your las cannons to a Volkite Culverin, Plasma Cannon, or Multi-Melter, though I would personally stick with the las cannon all day, every day. So what are their special rules? So they have the Precision Fire special rule, which means enemy models may not take cover saves or damage mitigation rolls against a wound caused by a shooting attack made by a model with this special rule, unless the shooting attack was a snapshot. So this means that they effectively have the night when combined with an augury scanner and the when combined with an augury scanner and the subsonic pulsar surgical upgrade, it effectively gives them a night vision plus because it ignores all damage mitigation rolls. I know your las cannon was already ignoring feel no pains, but it will also ignore Iron Hand's feel no pains when they get it anyway because of their like battle hardened stupid Morlocks. It'll give you no evade rolls against you, and it's just an all round really good solid precision fire special rule. You then get designated quarry, so basically choose after all models have set up an enemy unit that's a gargantuan, super heavy, knight, or titan subtype, in which you can reroll ones to wound or add +1 to your vehicle damage rolls from the shooting attack. So that effectively they become Iron Warriors, Legion Astartes special rule against that designated quarry, which is always going to be the biggest quarry, right? Fortified position. If the game allows fortifications and has not selected a dedicated transport, you may instead select a defensive line without occupying the fortification slot, but the points must be paid. Now, that's just a nice little cherry on top, isn't it? Like the fortified defense line is not amazing, but it is a thing, and I will get to the final point on this Sunkiller squad that I've left out up until now because it is so weird. Weird. Why they're bigger than anyone else, I don't know. So you can take 15 additional members for them plus 40 points each. And it, I think, plays in really well to how you can run this squad and how scary it is. It just takes that extra bit of firepower to take the squad down below 10 members. I think they become extra scary because of it. And it means that you become extra scary because of it. And yet, I think it just comes together in the form of one of the best anti-tank squads in the game, the best las cannon squads, bar none, I would say. And they're really, really, I think, rightly feared by anyone playing against this Legion. And it pains me, it really does pain me to say that. So on to the special characters. We'll go over, should we go over Rylanor the Unyielding first? So we get Rylanor the Unyielding, who is in the Legacies pack. So Rylanor the Unyielding is 250 points. He's basically a Contemptor Dreadnought with Strength, Toughness 7, 7 wounds, so an additional wound, Initiative 4, 3 attacks, Leadership 9, 2 up save. He's got an Assault Cannon, a Gravis Power Fist with Heavy Flamer, Automatic Deflector as standard. He's got Crusader, Loyalist, Emperor's Children, and he's 250 points. Now, would I recommend paying an extra, what is it, like 65 points, maybe a little bit more than that, for basically the Crusader special rule and being locked in Loyalist, and I suppose an extra wound? No, I would definitely not. I would just pay for a normal Contemptor and name him Rylanor. I wouldn't use this. This special character. He's just absolutely terrible, really. Yeah, I can't really see a reason to be taking Rylanor. So that was a quick review of that character. So we've got Lord Commander Eidolon for 215 points. You can see this on the channel both time Henrys have played me. He's got movement 7, weapon skill 6, ballistic skill 5, strength toughness 4, 3 wounds, initiative 5, 4 attacks, leadership 10, 2 up save. He's got an Archaeotech pistol, Glory Eterna, Sonic Shriekers, so -1 to hit him in the first round of combat, a Warhawk jump pack, excellent. He's got Artificer armor, Iron Halo, Frag Crack, Master of the Legion, Independent Character, Relentless Traitor, Prideful Onslaught. Jesus, there's so many lists. There's just so many lists. Glory Eterna is a Thunderhammer that, upon a successful charge, ignores the Unwieldy special rule. Oh, and also has Mastercrafted all the time. Incredibly good special weapon. especially combined with the fact that he's got a jump pack. He's just really, really good. His death scream is essentially like the Sonic, the Sonic somethings. Everyone scream at your screen. What's the Sonic Lance? Essentially, you've then got Prideful Onslaught. If Commander Eidolon is the army's warlord, then once all opposing models have been deployed, but before first turn has begun, select a rival unit. Eidolon and any unit is joined gains +1 to hit against the rival unit. If the rival unit is part of an enemy shooting attack or combat that results in a friendly model being removed as casualties, then Eidolon and any unit he is joined also gains a bonus of +1 to wound made against the rival unit. If the rival unit is part of a shooting attack or combat that results in a friendly unit being entirely removed as casualties or falling back, so basically if another unit that's not Eidolon's falls back or is entirely destroyed, they gain +1 to wound rolls against the rival unit as well as the +1 to hit for the remainder of the battle. In addition, Commander Eidolon and any unit is joined may only declare reactions against the rival unit, but the first such reaction each turn is free and does not reduce the reaction allotment of the player. I think that's quite a good, for Eidolon, quite a good Warlord trait. It fits in quite well. His prideful focus, I would say, on basically seeking out the hardest dude. And he is going to do really well at seeking out the hardest dude and nailing him in the head with a Thunderhammer at initiative 5 or 6 on the charge, I suppose. What I don't actually like about that is the reaction thing. Being limited to only the rival unit to react against, I think is very, very limiting. It means that my Lascannon squad fires at Eidolon's squad. Well, if he's picked my Dominator squad, he can't react against the Lascannon unit. So I think it's really, really harsh because you can't evade, you can't hold. If my squad goes and does something else somewhere else, you won't get your reactions. I think it's quite nice when other things give you that second reaction in a phase that you've picked by picking the Warlord trait. This isn't doing that. Getting a reaction the first free a turn, it's good because it can be used in many different phases, but I think the negatives outweigh the positives on where that reaction comes. As I said, I quite like the to hit and the +1 to wound when that starts coming in, but I think it's very, very limited on reactions, and they're such a big part of the game, it really limits Eidolon and Eidolon's army. Overall, as a character, I think he's very good. I think the Gloria Turner is just incredibly, incredibly good, especially when combined with his jump pack. It's just a shame that Palatine Blades can't have jump packs anymore, so we can't rock about with a big unit of them. So Saul Tarvitz, 155 points. He has a Charnable Broadsword, Mastercrafted Nemesis Bolter, Iron Halo, Artificer Armor, Frag Crack. He's basically got a Praetor profile, if I sum that up in as fast as possible. Legion Astartes, Emperor's Children, Master of the Legion, independent character, relentless. Preferred enemy, Emperor's Children, a brother betrayed, loyalist, defiant unto death. A brother betrayed is he gains +1 weapon skill, strength, and toughness while locked in combat with a model with independent character and Emperor's Children, or any unit that such a model has joined. If an enemy model that has both the independent character, Legion Astartes, Emperor's Children, is removed as a casualty, whilst locked in combat with Saul Tarvitz, then the controlling player gains +1 VP in addition to others. This is increased to +2 if Captain Lucius is removed as a casualty while engaged in a challenge with Saul Tarvitz. Do we think that is going to happen? So he's got his Charnable Broadsword that's +2 strength, melee, rending 4, dually stage 2, two-handed, mastercrafted. I don't think that's good enough on a Praetor level character, sadly. I think rending 4's it's good. It's very good when it's spammed across entire units, but that's not what's happening here. What we're talking about here is your character who normally will have AP2 all the time because of a Paragon Blade at minimum or a Thunderhammer that's going at initiative 2 on the charge because you're Emperor's Children. Now, your Duelist Edge 2, along with your initiative 5, means that in a challenge you'll be initiative 7, 8 when you charge. That's very good compared to Lucius, just straight away. That's 6, Duelist Edge 1. So 6, Duelist Edge 1, Emperor's Children for +1. And so you'll be going at the same time. I just don't think AP Dash with Rending 4 is good enough to be worth it on a character. Now, will he pull it back with Defiant Unto Death? If an army's Warlord has this trait, then check at the start of each of the controlling player's turns to see if any of the following is true. You've accrued fewer victory points than an enemy army. The army, including Saul Tarvitz, has fewer units on the battlefield. Captain Saul Tarvitz is within 6 inches of an objective. Captain Saul Tarvitz and any unit he's joined is locked in combat with more than one enemy unit or a single enemy unit that outnumbers Saul Tarvitz's unit. If any of these are true, Tarvitz and any friendly units that have at least one model within 12 of Tarvitz gain Fearless. In addition, gains a reaction in the shooting phase. Now that I think is quite good. From a power perspective, I think actually the Warlord trait for the Traitors, the Broken Mirror, is actually better because it doesn't give you Fearless all the time, so it doesn't stop you evading, because that's what this is going to do if you are currently losing. Fearless is good, it's just that double-edged sword. So I don't think it pulls it back I don't think it pulls back the Charnable Broadsword. A Brother Betrayed is very, very limited in its scope of when it's going to go off. So I just don't think he's in a brilliant place as a character. He just needs to be boosted to a bit better than Rending 4 AP Dash. So Lucius, not yet the Eternal, the Faultless Blade, 215 points, is Weapon Skill 7, so 1 more than Tarvitz. Ballistic Skill 5, Strength Toughness 4, 3 wounds, Initiative 6, 4 attacks, Leadership 10, 2 up save. So the same attacks as Tarvitz. He's got Bolt Pistol, 19, the Blade of the Lair, Artificer Armour, Iron Halo, all the expected stuff, preferred enemy independent characters, which I would say is much better overall than preferred enemy Emperor's Children. If you are going against Tarvitz, it means that Tarvitz is in a squad of Emperor's Children. Therefore, if you attack the squad of Emperor's Children, you're attacking Tarvitz, so you get preferred enemy against all of those. You got Precision Strike 3+, Stubborn, really good on a Leadership 10 model, probably better than Fearless because you still get your Evade. Supreme Duelist and the Blade alone. You can take Sonic Shriekers for 10 points. Definitely do that. That will then mean that Tarvitz is hitting you on 6s as a comparison point. You can exchange the Blade of the Lair for a close combat weapon, reducing your cost to 175. So I wouldn't do that at all. In fact, if there's this stipulation that unless this option is chosen, Lucius may not be taken in the same army as Fulgrim. I wouldn't recommend taking Lucius in an army with Fulgrim because of that rule. Supreme Duelist is, if Lucius's initiative characteristic is higher than his opponent's, you gain +1 attack. Your initiative is 6 and Tarvitz's is 5, so you gain +1 attack in that combat. You've got 19, which is melee, rending 3+, duelist Aegis 1. You gain Murderous Strike 6, Mastercrafted. A model with a special rule gains a bonus to their weapon skill equal to the value in brackets whenever engaged in a challenge with an enemy model. So we're starting to see that 215 points pay off versus the 155. The Blade of the Lair is AP2 all the time. Thank God for that. Duelist Edge 1, Fleshbane, Specialist Weapon, Mastercrafted. One thing about the 19 is rending. So you'll be rending on a 3 going into Dreadnoughts, things like that. I do think rending 3 is potentially good enough to get away with. It's certainly going to do you better than Tarvitz during an Istvan 3 campaign. Always pay that extra 30 points for the Blade of the Lair. It's just not worth not doing. You've got Fleshbane, you've got AP2 all the time. There's just no real downside to taking it at any point. The Blade alone, if an army's Warlord has this trait, then no other models All units may use his leadership regardless of rules or war gear. However, whenever Captain Lucius is engaged in a challenge, all friendly models in the same combat gain the Fearless special rule. In addition, the first reaction made in each game turn by Captain Lucius and any unit he has joined does not use up the point for the controlling player's reaction allotment. So this is much better, I would say, than Eidolon's special rule, because it's any unit he has joined, and it's not forced to be only against the target rival unit. It's against any. Now, not being able to use his leadership isn't brilliant, but sticking something else with leadership 9 or leadership 8 and just don't care as he confers his stubborn. With that, I would recommend putting him in a Tartarus Terminator unit with Thunderhammers, and then you're not really going to care that you can't use his leadership. Put a Herald in there. It doesn't really matter then, because you're fearless from the Herald, and your unit will gain line, and you'll just be rolling people at a higher initiative than they are going to strike with their initiative 1 weapons. So who cares about not being able to use his leadership? I don't think it has to be such a downside if you structure your army with things to mitigate it. Even a Pheonix Warder consul at leadership 9, stubborn leadership 9, you're not caring. So finally, onto Fulgrim, the bulkiest of Primarchs. And you are 425 points. You've got movement 8, weapon skill 8, so the higher end of weapon skills, as expected. Ballistic skill, strength, toughness, wounds 6, initiative 8, 6 attacks, leadership 10, 2 up save. You've got the Gilded Panoply, Blade of the Lair, Firebrand, Frag Grenades. You've got Legion Astartes, Emperor's Children, Master of the Legion, bulky 6, which I believe is the bulkiest of all Primarchs. He's got Legion Astartes, Emperor's Children, Master of the Legion, bulky 6, Sudden Strike 1, Crusader, Tactical Excellence, Sublime Swordsman, Sire of the Emperor's Children. May exchange the Blade of the Lair for Firebrand for no additional cost. So Sire of the Emperor's Children, all friendly models with Legion Astartes, Emperor's Children that can draw a line of sight to Fulgrim may use Fulgrim's leadership for all morale and pinning chests. And all friendly units composed entirely of models with Emperor's Children special rule, while Fulgrim is also on the battlefield, gain +1 wound used to calculate if they've won combat. Now that doesn't stack with the Pheonix Warden special rule. In addition, the first reaction made each game turn by Fulgrim and any unit that he's joined does not use up a point of the controlling player's reaction allotment. Now I think that one's a very good one as well. Although it's limited to his unit, a lot of the time you are going to be reacting with Fulgrim because he's your most important model on the table as soon as he gets written into your list. The Gilded Panoply, 2 up armor save, 3 up invuln against melee attacks, 4 up against all other wounds. A lot of the time melee is where you're going to take a load of wounds because you're probably going to tank las cannons on some. So a lot of the time the combat is where you're going to take a load of wounds because the most attacks at AP2 that come in, I find, tend to be in combat because you've got a limited amount of las cannons that you can stuff into a list, whereas there's lots of ways of buffing attacks when you get to combat. Sublime Swordsman, when making melee attacks as part of a challenge, he gains a number of additional attacks equal to the amount which his initiative characteristic is greater than his opponent. For example, if Fulgrim attacks with initiative characteristic of 5, if Fulgrim attacks an enemy model with initiative 5, it grants him 3 additional attacks. So against a Praetor, he's getting 9 attacks. So that's basically the same as buffed up Angron on turn 4, which is just incredibly good. Tactical Excellence, once per battle, the controlling player may declare to use this special rule. For the duration of that phase, enemy models that attempt to declare a reaction against move shoots or charges made by Fulgrim must first pass a leadership test using the highest leadership characteristic from the unit, unless that unit is making the reaction includes at least one model with the Primarch type. in which case they may make reactions as normal. That's okay. It's more of a cherry on the top style rule. It's not the most brilliant. Blade of the Lair is AP2, Duelist Edge 1, Fleshbane, Mastercrafted, Specialist Weapon. Fireblade is +1 Strength AP2, Murderous Strike, Mastercrafted, Specialist Weapon. Firebrand is Strength 6 AP4, Pistol 2, Deflagrate, Shred, Mastercrafted. The Specialist Weapons for both blades, you're not going to get either of them, or you're not going to get both of them at any one time. You've got Duelist says 1, Fleshbane, Mastercrafted Specialist Weapon at AP2 versus +1 Strength, so your Strength 7 there, AP2, Murderous Strike 5+, Mastercrafted Specialist Weapon. And it really is a bit of a toss-up what you're going to choose here. Murderous Strike is going to be very useful if you ever want to take down dreads, multi-wound models. If you're going against single wound models or want to put more attacks onto a Primarch, you're going to want the Blade of Lair, which is Duelist Edge 1, Fleshbane, because the Fleshbane is going to really help you out there. Now, most of the time I would choose Fireblade because of that Murderous Strike. It's going to help you get through Terminator squads, it's going to help you get through Veteran squads, anything with 2 wounds, it's going to really help against because you're not naturally doubling those squads out. Now, the last comparison I think we need to make with Fulgrim is how does he stack up to Ferrous? And really sadly, and this is more a comment on Ferrous being stupidly powerful, is the Lair Blade isn't going to lop Ferrous's head off most of the time. Most of the time, Ferrous is going to do you in as Fulgrim. And I think it's a real... I'm not going to say this bit. So that is the wrap-up of Fulgrim. I think he's quite a good Primarch. I like his drawing line of sight to use his leadership. It's a vast army buff. Leadership 10 is going to makes it really, really good. Like, I suppose any Primarch's leadership 10, but conferring it is really good. He's got a ton of attacks. He's got 3-up invuln in combat. So what is not to like about any of his rules? The only thing that confuses me is his bulky 6. I mean, it fits for Snake Fulgrim, but we've not got that model yet. Where is Snake Fulgrim? We need Snake Fulgrim. We need Snake Fulgrim. So with that is the Emperor's Children review. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you want to support the channel, don't forget to hit like, comment below what you liked, what you didn't like, what I missed, what can you help other Emperor's Children players with, leave it in the comments below. If you really liked it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There is also a Patreon link below where you can get yourself access to the Discord, a bounty tray, and ad-free videos. And with that, I'll close it out. I'll see you next time in a bit.